Welcome to part 2 of the demo of the Resources and Production module, which is intended for use with computerized, web-based, multiplayer Grand Europa. Last time we looked at technology, manpower, raw materials, agriculture, oil, and factories. And those are all the basic things that are required before a player can create new armed forces. And that's what we're going to look at this time. Building, rebuilding, upgrading ground, air, and naval forces. First of all, though, a quick review of some things from last time. Transfers, because each player has the ability to transfer all those different kinds of points, manpower points, raw material points, agriculture points, oil points, and so on, can transfer those to other nations. Things will always be imported and exported. Players have the ability to accept transfers, to cancel transfers. One way to do it is on this screen where each turn all those things show up in one place. Alternatively, manpower transfers can be dealt with in the manpower menu. Raw material transfers can be dealt with in the raw materials menu, and so forth. The next thing is technology. As I mentioned before, I'm still trying to figure out what to do with technology. There are a couple possibilities here, and I haven't made up my mind. I've tinkered with both ways now. One way is that players will receive technology points and they'll be able to apply those to whatever they want. Obviously, you can't build an atomic bomb until you have sufficient technology. You can't even create bazookas or tiger tanks until you have the right technology, but you can decide how you want to apply the technology points for whatever you think should have priority. If you want to try to build an atomic bomb right away, then you would apply all your technology points to atomic bombs without trying to develop heavy tanks or man-portable anti-tank weapons or anything like that. Another way to do it, to achieve the same goals, the same increases in technology levels, another way to do it is to say, well, after the nation has been at war for a suitable period of time that matches the historical period of time that they were at war, then they will achieve the same levels of technology that they achieved historically. I'm not sure about that, haven't made a decision, so I haven't done too much work on technology. For the moment, technology is pretty much frozen at the lower levels, except where I've cranked it up a little bit just for demo purposes. Other things, manpower. Each nation has population, has some proportion of that population which will be available as military manpower. Some proportion of that population will be available as manpower for labor. Labor, or rather manpower, can be sent from one nation to another nation. So you could send me military points and I would be able to create armed forces with those points. You could send me labor points and I'd be able to use those for agriculture or to work in my factories and so forth. It's also possible to have POWs and to put POWs to work. If we go back here, we can see raw materials. We don't split this up to things like coal, iron ore, nickel, or manganese. It's just generic raw materials, and those are necessary to feed into the factories to produce armaments every turn. Most nations will have some source of some raw materials, but raw materials can also be imported and exported from one player to another player. Agriculture, extremely important. If you don't have sufficient agricultural resources and if you don't assign enough manpower to those agricultural resources, then your nation will certainly suffer. Your efficiency of producing various armaments will go down, and likewise the efficiency of your armed forces will go down. And that's all controlled here through this menu. We'll go back up here. And oil, as everyone knows, is one of the most critical resources, much like agriculture. You must have enough oil resource points to support your war economy, and that means both production and your armed forces. And if you don't have enough points, either because you're unable to produce them yourselves or you don't, no one will export them to you, then your armed forces and your economy are going to run into trouble. So all those things that we've talked about so far end up over here at factories, and factories produce armaments. Armaments being a generic term here for supplies, equipment, artillery, vehicles, armored fighting vehicles, aircraft, and ships. So with your various kinds of resources and your manpower, you'll be able to build factories, and with the factories, you'll be able to produce all those different kinds of armaments. All right, so we looked at all those things last time in the rather lengthy demo video that I did. What we didn't look at was the final step here, armed forces. So once you actually have some available manpower and you have produced some armaments with your various resources, or if someone has exported some armaments to you, then you'll be able to take the manpower and the armaments, and you'll be able to build, rebuild, or upgrade ground, air, and naval forces. So let's take a look at that. We'll click here. We're looking at the nation of Mordor, which I created just for debugging and demo purposes. So I could do anything I want with that. I just throw in random numbers to see how things are going to work, to make sure that everything is coming out as I expect, and also to be able to show it here. So looking at Mordor, we can see that as of this turn, which is January of 1941, at the beginning of the quarterly resources and production cycle for January 1941, we can see at the moment no units are being formed by Mordor. But we do have some points available. So we have some manpower points, some supply points, some equipment points, no artillery, no vehicle points, because Mordor is a small, poor country. But for some reason, probably because somebody sent us some, we have some AFV points. So we can think about how do we want to turn those points into armed forces. And what we'll actually play around with here will be ground forces, although air and naval are much the same, but we'll just look at the ground stuff to try to keep this kind of short and sweet. So we'll give this a click, and we look here. We're going to create some ground units. At the moment, none of them being formed or built or trained. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look down here and decide what do we want to create with these points that we have available. The system is only going to show us those things that can actually be built within the limitations of these points. So maybe the player from Mordor says, well, I want to build an armor division. Well, I'm sure you want to, but there's not enough manpower here, and there's not enough AFV points here to build an armor division. So at this moment, an armor division is not going to show up in the list of units that you could create. So we have to be a little less large in our approach here. We have to think about some small units that we can take, and we could conceivably take a pair of militia units. We have enough points to do that. Or we could take a pair of infantry battalions. We have enough points to do that. Or we could take one of each. We could do that with the points. If we took the cavalry battalion, that would be it, because the cavalry battalion requires 2 points of equipment, and there are only 2 available. So if we tried to do that, the system would say, no, you can't do that. You don't have that many points. Well, we could do the cavalry battalion, or we could say tanks. Let's do some tankettes. And these are only tankettes, by the way, because what we have is only level 1 of technology. So it's technology level 1. We have 1 AFV point. So we don't have sufficient technology to build KVs or T-34s or Tigers or Panthers or even regular tanks. Just tankettes is all that we could build here. If we do build the tankettes, we could also build at the same time. We could do a militia battalion, or we could do an infantry battalion, and that would pretty much eat up all the points that we have available. So although we could do both of those at the same time, just to show you how this works, I'm going to unclick that, and we'll say we're just going to make the tankette battalion in this step, and we'll walk through this again. But so you'll see what happens when we make the tankette battalion. We'll confirm that, and now it shows, okay, there's one unit that's being formed, built, or trained, and although we still show all these points are available at the start of the turn, they have now been reduced because we spent points on that tankette battalion. So the only thing that we have left is we could choose either one militia battalion or one infantry battalion. There's not too much difference between the two. The militia is available right now. The infantry battalion won't be available for a couple of turns. So let's go ahead and take the militia. And when we do that, now we have two units that are being formed, and we can see we don't have enough points available to build anything else. That used up all of our manpower and all of our equipment and all of our AFVs, and we never had any vehicles. We never had any artillery. We do have some supplies left, but supplies alone are not enough to build units. So there we've gone through the steps of creating a couple units. We could have done that in one step, but I just wanted to show you how it worked by doing it in two different steps. And we'll go back to the menu now. And in this menu, it's still showing us the status of the points for all the different kinds of armaments. And in addition, it's showing us that we have these units being formed, built, and trained. And we can see the location for the militia is yet to be determined, because militia units are only going to show up in a location within X number of hexes of an enemy unit. And had enemy units not penetrated into Mordor, we wouldn't have been able to build militia units at all. We would have just had the infantry battalions rather than militia battalions to build. We can see the tank unit here, the tankette unit, is going to appear where the factory is located. If we had multiple factories, we would have to pick which one of those factories it's going to appear in, but Mordor having only the single factory, so it's automatically going to appear there. When are those units going to arrive? Well, the militia is going to show up immediately in the next phase or the phase after that. Anyway, one of the early phases of this player turn, the militia battalion is going to be placed on the map and be able to play, whereas the tankette battalion does need some training. It doesn't need as much training as an entire division, but it won't be until the March 1 turn that we'll see that tankette battalion show up. Now we could click for either one of these if we wanted to see details. The details show specific things like how many REs, what's the armor effects, does it have ATEC, does it have any engineer ability, all those kinds of things would show up in the details if we wanted to look at those, but we'll skip that for now. We could also cancel either or both of these units and say, oh, I changed my mind, I don't want those. The tankette battalion, for example, we could cancel it now, or we could cancel it any time between now and March 1, 1941, when it arrives on the map. If we cancel the unit, then we automatically get back all of those points, the manpower points, supply points, equipment points, and AFVs in the case of the tankettes. We would get those back in our pool, and we could spend them again immediately, or we could stockpile them for use at a later time if we wanted to. But we won't cancel them. We'll just let them go. Now, renaming, on the other hand, is not necessary, but I think players will often want to do that because units get a designation based on this really bland number that gets put up there by the database. The database just says, okay, here's the next number, and we'll throw that up. And if you don't like saying this is the 1001 militia battalion, you can say, let's rename that and let's give it something, a little more exciting here. Something like that. You could call it anything that you wanted, just so you can recognize it. But it doesn't really matter. We'll just go back here and look at this, and really that's it. Once you have gone through the earlier steps of allocating your manpower to military uses, agriculture uses, production uses. Once you have made sure that you have enough agricultural points to keep everybody happy, once you have built your factories, and once your factories have produced your various kinds of armaments, then you are able to create your armed forces whatever you want. If you want to focus on lots and lots of aircraft, you can do that. If you want to build tanks and create armor divisions, you can do that. Assuming you have enough resources, you can do that. If you just want to have a bunch of militia battalions running around, well, that's pretty easy to do, and they arrive pretty quickly. In any event, that's an overview of the final step. The final step of the resources and production module, in this case for the wonderful nation of Mordor. And that's how you can take all those other points that we've been playing around with, create your armed forces, put them on the map, and play within the context of the computerized, web-based, multiplayer Grand Europa game. So that's about it for now. We will look at some more things after a while. It'll probably be a few weeks before I have anything else to go. So I hope that gave you some idea of how I intend for this module to work. And one of these days, we will have this baby finished and ready to go. Take care and have fun playing.